departments. We have archaeology, we have historic preservation, we have museums, historical sites. We manage 4 forts, we manage 2 museums. One is a historical house museum and also the Pompa Museum that is dedicated to the study of slavery in the Bahamas. And so we are a big corporation with a huge mandate. And so it's a lot to tell the story, it's a lot to get it into small sections and to show to the public. So this exhibition is one way that we did that, using archaeology artifacts and also the archaeology team and our curation team. So I hope you're prepared and I hope you enjoy the presentation. It's based on a new exhibition at Pompa Museum. It's called Lucayans, the Valor of the Vanquished. So a mural depicting Columbus's 1492 arrival in the Bahamas was gifted to the AMMC in 2021. Although it was beautiful, it was not the story that we wanted to tell. There were no images pre-Columbus, given the impression that the island's history started with that fateful landfall on Guanahani, or San Salvador, on October 12, 1492. But what of the centuries of island life that preceded this event? With indigenous settlements going back to 700. This absence highlighted renewed discussion over the statue of Columbus, previously located at Government House, and its colonial symbolism. In early October 2021, a man who referred to himself as Michael the Archangel used a sledgehammer to damage the right leg of the statue while shouting at the figure. The act came 2 days before the National Heroes Day, a holiday dedicated to honoring Bahamian national heroes that was established in 2013, replacing Columbus Day or Discovery Day. There have been increasing calls for an anti-colonial movement aimed at the liberation of cultural identity and Bahamian icons, and the removal of colonial representations in Bahamian society, including on the nation's currency and statues in historical significant locations. And while the Columbus focus was only a small part of a highly diverse and engaging reflection on some of the histories, as well as the issues facing our country today, tourism, climate change, etc., it sowed the seed of a new venture that aimed to visually re-engage young audiences with the Lucayans. Through this change in recognition and perspective, we can bring more attention to the rich and storied history of the Bahamas. The history predates the voyage of Christopher Columbus by millennia and is inextricably linked to the first people of the islands. The irony is that Columbus didn't discover anything. Not only was he lost thinking he had landed in India, but there is significant evidence of transoceanic contact prior to 1492. The celebration of Columbus celebrates a fictionalized and sanitized version of colonialism, whitewashing generations of brutality that many Europeans brought to these shores. Today's museums and historic sites are more than places to preserve art, artifacts, and memories of the past. They are the new town square, where members of the community can come together and consider issues against the backdrop of cultural identity and history. In order to do this inclusively, we need to overcome a millennium of cultural bias. I propose that Maya Angelou was right when she said, "The need for change bulldozed a road down the center of my mind. Change of this kind involves ripping up the old road and blazing a new trail one marker at a time. To do this, we have to approach our narratives with fresh eyes." The inherent problem in traditional Western storytelling is the role of the author. Historically, Western society has controlled the path of the story. They select the protagonist, designate who or what is important, determine the plot points, develop the characters, and assign significance to the material being shared. This approach has resulted in a stereotypical museum culture that focuses on collecting and showcasing the stories, successes, and works of the white male in society. Though not the result of a physical battle, our museums have become a metaphor for Winston Churchill's quote, "History is written by the victors." We have been celebrating the story of the victors for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it is only in recent times that we've allowed that there are a wealth of stories that are being lost amidst promoting this value system, If we are trying to break down these biases, we have to start by accepting a new truth. The truth is that there is more than one truth. You can give 10 people the same facts and ask them to tell a story. Each person's story will be different. The stories will be infused with that person's perspectives, their cultural biases, and their personal baggage. Only by recognizing the value of each of these perspectives and accepting other viewpoints can we move toward a more shared experience. As the curator of this exhibition, my goal was to make sure that the voices of the Lucayans were prominent in the historical narrative. The exhibition provides an opportunity to learn more about the Lucayans and to celebrate the rich cultural heritage of the Bahamas. It also reminds us that the Lucayans were a vital part of the history of the Bahamas, and their legacy continues to be an important part of the Bahamas today. The Lucayans were the first people met by Christopher Columbus when he arrived in the Americas in 1492, but their story has been overshadowed ever since by the colonial histories that followed. The exhibition offers a unique chance to redress its imbalance and to view the story of the Lucayans in its own right. The exhibit introduces the Lucayans as the first inhabitants of the Bahamas, and then provides an in-depth look at the material culture of the settlements where they lived, their distinct pottery, ceremonial objects, and stone tools. The Lucayan culture was a complex and highly developed society that flourished between 600 and 1500. The museum has historically held the position of authority when it comes to knowledge and truth. It is through them that nations can tell their stories and that societies can be influenced and shaped. Exhibits such as Lucayans, Veil of the Vanquished highlight the power of museums. The exhibition team consisted of a cross-sectional employees from AMMC. They include myself as the curator, Dr. Grace Turner, who is our chief archaeologist, Kelly Fowler, who is our assistant archaeologist, Marissa Wells, our assistant collections officer, Shavana Dean, our senior assistant preservation architect, Gia Davis, public relations, and Christine Sawyer, who was our senior clerk who dealt with administration. The exhibition was planned, designed, and mounted in 2 months. I am extremely grateful for my team and their tireless efforts to put this exhibition together. And in these photos, you can see us putting it together. It was a tireless effort. It was kind of a rush, but it took us 2 months, but we got it done. And I really, really appreciate my team for all of their hard work. A ceremony to officially open an exhibition of artwork and artifacts showing the history of the first inhabitants of the Bahamas was held on October 12, 2022 in the Pompey Square. The opening ceremony for the new exhibit, The Lucayans, the Veil of the Vanquished, featured tributes like a symbolic conch horn blowing and a dedication written and presented by Bahamian author and poet Patricia Glinton Mikolas. There are also remarks from Prime Minister Philip Davis, who focused on remembering those that came before us. Bahamian author Tellis Bethel also presented remarks expressing the weight of keeping the story of the Lucayans, a people known for their peaceful way of life, alive. Within their story are profound implications that speak to the Bahamas' destiny and identity for the greater good of humanity. Their demise also uncovers an inherent responsibility left to us as inheritors of these islands, said Bethel. The opening ended with a tour of the exhibition. 10 illustrations have been developed by artist Merrill Clark to showcase the lifeways and culture material of the Lucayans, the indigenous people of the Bahamas, and Turks and Caicos Islands. These are based on the latest archaeological investigations in the region and selected artifacts in museum collections. The illustrations showcase distinctive elements of Lucayan material culture and lifeways, as indicated by the archaeological and historical records, especially the ways in which materials and resources are used. In this first panel, titled Cacique and Emissary, with an entourage of family members ceremonial painted and attired in a rich variety of stones and shell bead body ornaments, the ceremonial nature of this exchange underscores that these inter-island connections were not simply about accessing materials and artifacts, but about the social connections that bound people together in these long-distance networks. The second panel, entitled Journey's End, shows canoeists signaling to the gathering crowd on the beach upon their return from a successful trading voyage to Hispaniola. The cargo contains valuable stock, hutillas, parrots, maize, cassava, and trade goods. Trade linked the many islands in the archipelago to each other and to communities on Hispaniola and Cuba and beyond. Evidence for the circulation of goods is recovered at archaeological sites in the region from reported from imported ceramics to exotic stone artifacts. Third slide. The Bahamas has shallow, impoverished soils, making agriculture a challenge. They do not have hard stone, which is materials relied upon in the past to create axes and other tools in order to cut down trees to make canoes. There is nothing simple about dealing with these conditions. This illustration underscores the ways in which Lucayans adapted to these challenges, from seafaring and fishing, to the production of root crops, to the connections they made to their distant homelands. Other crops would have been important, including maize, yams, sweet potato, chili peppers, beans, and gourds. Working in the gardens, gathering plants, and hunting would have been daily activities that absorbed much time. The Lucayans were skilled swimmers and divers, and much of their food came from the surrounding waters. This fisherfolk illustration depicts 3 divers in the water spearfishing in the sun-dappled shadows, while 2 wait in the canoe at the surface for the catch to come in. One diver has speared a parrotfish, while another holds a conch as he swims closer to the canoe. The Spanish enslaved the Lucayans specifically for their diving skills, which were in high demand for the pearl fisheries off the coast of Venezuela during the early colonial period. They were forced to dive for pearls to unsafe depths. The underwater scene therefore links 2 threads, showing traditional life and hunting skills and touching upon how these skills were taken advantage of by the colonizers. The early settlers brought with them ceramics from their homelands, but once permanently settled on the islands, they had to create ceramics using the resources on hand, as shown in this illustration, palmetto potters. Unlike the volcanic islands to the south, the Lucayan archipelago had relatively poor clay sources. The red local loams or clays found in swales, mangrove swamps, inland lakes, and ponds were used together with a burnt shell temper for added strength. Palmetto ware, as Lucayan ceramics are known, are one of the key markers of native adaptation to the islands. These ceramics first started appearing circa 800 and were still in use when Columbus arrived in the region. Next, we will take a look at some of the artifacts and ecofacts in the exhibition, because one of the aims of this exhibition was to bring the collections to a wider knowledge, making the rich indigenous cultural heritage of the islands more accessible. Another way is to try and better understand the development of the unique Lucayan style. Some items on display include Koyabo, a bat-faced figure from an important Taino vessel excavated from Samana Key. Next, we have a Lucayan shell whistle. This olive shell was adapted to be used as a whistle and was excavated from Long Island. A square shell bead. This unusual bead has a center hole with 3 lines drawn from the hole to each corner and was excavated from Acklands Island. Stone bead necklace. A necklace of 99 imported stone beads was excavated from Long Island. A semi-figure, or some people say semi, is a broken portion of an imported stone semi-figurine. Its small size makes it portable. It was excavated from Samana Key. Next, we have a Taino ceramic rim decorated with diagonal strokes. It was excavated from New Providence Island. I should also mention that because of the numerous artifacts included in the exhibition, student tours are conducted by the AMMC Archaeology Department. As a result, students can interact with professionals, acquire knowledge about archaeology, and establish connections with objects and Lucayans. I applaud them for this because I watched them with some students. It was a lot. And it's amazing how they engage them. So hats off to that department. We also, in this exhibition, we have a cacique interactive room. So when you walk into the room, you are immersed in the sound of caves. You can hear bats and dripping water. And then you can put on headphones, and the headphones play a recorded voice describing the importance of caves to the Lucayans, and also information on the petroglyphs, also known as Lucayan rock art. Lucayan rock art is found throughout the Lucayan Islands, specifically Crooked Island, Eleuthera, Inagua, Long Island, New Providence, Mayaguana, Rum Key, and San Salvador, making significant locations like places for religious rituals or rivers, or simply recording directions for travel or major events. Some are easy to interpret, as they are objects every day, like a canoe, paddle, or pipe. but some are more difficult to interpret. We had one student who said that they look like Teletubbies. And when I looked at it, they really looked like a Teletubby, so I believe her. But I don't think they existed back then, so it probably is something else. And each of the petroglyphs that are painting on the wall are actual replicas found in the cave in Rumkey. And the reason for this is interactive exhibits convey and retain information by engaging users through a variety of media on multiple sensory levels. The glue that keeps users glued to them is the sheer joy of interaction. Exhibits that invite and encourage the active participation of their viewers turn knowledge transfer into a real experience. It was important to have an interactive component in this exhibition. Also in this exhibition, you can touch. You know, when you go in museums, the first thing they say is do not touch, stay away. But please do not touch the exhibitions. Almost seems like a challenge rather than a direct request for anyone, most notably children. Visiting a museum and faced with objects or specimens we don't see daily is tempting. Museums are beginning to grasp the need to do more than just gaze. Touching is a part of cognitive development. Of the five senses, it's the one that affords the most accurate knowledge of an object. It helps us memorize and triggers emotions. Engaging visitors directly with collections is one of the most powerful educational strategies available. Removing barriers and allowing people to touch and experience an object leaves a lasting impression that simply reading about it behind the glass cannot provide. For students in primary and secondary schools, the Discovery Table introduces them to the Lucayan culture through artifacts. Artifacts were chosen by Dr. Bill Keegan, who is the curator of Caribbean archaeology at the Florida Museum of Natural History, University of Florida. Because of the long history of colonization and enslavement in the Bahamas, it's often difficult to find reliable information about the Lucayans. Shell tools, coral tools, stone axes, and clay pots are on the table. Replica zemis are also there, a bow drill which is used to make fire through friction, and also face painting that was made from red bixa seeds. However, the most popular item is a stuffed animal, a now extinct rodent that was native to the Bahamas at the time. It was an hutia. All materials on the table are hands-on and contribute to the exhibition's objectives. The exhibition also has a mini barbecue scene that highlights the diet of the Lucayans. In addition, if you're brave enough and can't get low, you can sit on a duo and be a cacique for the day. The exhibition booklet. So we developed exhibition booklets for this exhibition. It contains a word search, an article written by our chief archaeologist, Dr. Grace Turner, pictures of the objects, and also an exercise at the back for reflection. The booklets are available for preschool, primary, and high school students. In conclusion, the unifying theme running through the exhibition is that prehistory should also be viewed as history. In the Lucayan archipelago, history does not start in 1492 with Columbus simply because this is the first time a European wrote about these islands. The Lucayans were not silent. Their histories were lived experience and those of the ancestors before them. In addition, as a result of the exhibition's popularity, the closing date has been extended to October 27, 2023. It was a pleasure to curate this exhibition, and I look forward to creating other valuable, interactive, and educational experiences in the future. I invite you to go and visit the exhibition, The Lucayans Veil of the Vanquished, on display at the Pompey Museum of Slavery and Emancipation until October 27, 2023. After closing, this exhibition is scheduled to tour the Family Islands, beginning with Grand Bahama. Thank you.
She did it with 3 minutes to spare. So, any questions? We have 10 minutes for questions. And we have 10 minutes. No. Yeah, okay. If you stand up, maybe
My question is extremely simple, and thank you for this presentation and the work that you're doing.
what did Lucayans, how did they call themselves? Is that the native name for themselves, or is that a?
So that's native to the Bahamas. They were a branch of the Arawaks, or some people say the Taínos, yeah. So they're the same people, but they were native to the Bahamas.
Can you introduce yourself so we know?
Sure.
Remember, all our sessions are being taped, and you'll be able to view them and or listen to them on our YouTube channel.
I am Damari Burgos. I'm here from Casa Museo Filiberto de Rios in Puerto Rico, and I was asking for that same reason. I think that part of the value of these presentations in different islands in the Caribbean is because it helps us patch together, right, the spaces of knowledge that we've lost from our ancestors. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I'm Maya Mutu here from the Cayman Islands, National Gallery of the Cayman Islands. And I wanted to ask, given you mentioned that there tends to be a lack of resources when it comes to learning about Lucayans or other cultures that we may have lost information about over time. Of course, you have a lot of the sort of physical resources in terms of the ceramics, etc. But how do you, when you're a curator, try to approach a Lucayan perspective if you don't have, written materials written in their own voice, or if you're not able to interview a person?
A Lucayan, because they're not here. So it comes from interpretation. So it's your interpretation, and that's why I said if you interview 10 people about one story, they can come up with 10 different stories. But as a curator, because I work at Antiquities Monuments Museums Corporation, I have access to archaeologists. So I have access to all these artifacts that can help me to tell this story. And so that was one thing that helped me curating this exhibit, because I had access to those professionals. In any other way, I know Dr. Bill Keegan, when he did the Lucayan boxes with the artifacts, he used artifacts. So some of them were original and some of them were stuff that he purchased. So he purchased like cassava bread from Jamaica, to give the impression that this is what the Lucayans ate. So I think it depends on the interpretation and the person who's actually telling the story, but we have to stick to the story. We have to tell the true story in any way possible.
Yes?
Andrea Proximate, Nassau. How do you engage the students that come on the tour? Like, what type of activities besides what you showed us? Like, is there anything additional that you do with the students to keep them engaged? And also, are you in partnership with the Ministry of Education to make sure that the schools are coming as part of the students' curriculum, or how does that work?
Okay, so we are in partnership with the Ministry of Education. And so far, this exhibition, since it opened in October, has taught probably over 1,000 students. So we have students from preschool, so that's age 2, up until 12th grade, that's age 16, 17. So they are engaged in a variety of ways. So they look at the panels, they are able to listen, because we have archaeologists who actually give it a tour, and they're sitting right in the back, they're looking at me. So we have archaeologists who actually give the tour, and what they do is they give their own interpretation, they show them the artifacts. And a good thing about it is that they're able to touch. And so the artifacts are a way to teach them about these objects that were available with the Lucayans. Some of them are replicas and some of them are real artifacts. And also with the booklet. So the booklet has coloring pages. So we have a coloring page for preschool children. We have word searches for primary school children. And the high school students are encouraged to write. That's the exhibition reflection at the back of the book. And so the booklet is something, an addition that they pay for. The book is, I think it's $3. And the exhibition itself is $5. So for $8, you can get a really thorough exhibition and tour of the Lucayan exhibit with archaeologists.
Yes? Yeah?
Good morning, Andrea Major. I was fortunate enough to view your exhibit on Saturday after we had like an hour to get on like one of them. So it was very nice indeed. I have one question, so maybe Mr. Sarver one. Did the cotton that the Lucayans use, did they find that in the Bahamas or they brought that to South America?
So some of it was important. One theory is that the Lucayans did a lot of oceanic travel between the Bahamas and the other islands. So some of them, they might have brought a plant. So there are different theories. Some of that is that the cotton was actually indigenous to the Bahamas, and some that it was imported from different islands. The cotton that is used in this exhibition that Dr. Bill Keegan curated for this exhibition is cotton that was found in the Bahamas. You can hear me? Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so we know that the Sea Island cotton came with,
Yeah.
that came with the royalists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but again, this other cotton was there before then.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lucayans brought the cotton from South America.
Might be a theory.
I have a voice on the side.
Oh,
A very respected
she can help you. She can answer any question about that.
voice. So maybe,
The cotton would not have been native to the Bahamas. Lucayans would have introduced these products and plants that they would have been gathering during their time living in the Caribbean. They had been elsewhere in the Caribbean for at least 2,000 years before they got to the Lucayos Islands. And some plants and materials they brought from the mainland of Central and South America.
okay, perhaps you can give us a little rundown on the different types of native peoples that were here, like the carrot, the Taino, you know, the Lucayans,
Sorry, let me introduce her. This is our chief archaeologist, Dr. Grace Turner. And so, yeah, that's why she's answering the question.
For the Bahamas, this is one of our colonialist-inspired ahistorical details that we have to correct. The original name of the Bahamas, the archipelago, was Lucayos. We believe that Lucayos was Taino for the little islands, because they're moving into these islands from Cuba and the Europeans named Hispaniola. Those are the two largest islands in the area. So of course, to them, these would be the little islands. And Lucayans were people of the little islands. At some point, the name Bahama was always the Taino and Lucayan name for the island that's now known as Grand Bahama. At some point, Europeans just called all the archipelago the Bahamas. They just pluralized it. Some European descended historian theorized without any research basis, theorized sometime in the 1960s that came from Spanish for los seas, bajos mares. That's so not so. That's bad Spanish. Ahistorical. The original name is Lucayos. And at some point, the name of the archipelago was just transferred and called the Bahamas. That's it.
Thank you very much.
And one other thing I want to say to that is that in the Lucayan exhibition booklet, the one for high school students, Dr. Turner actually wrote an article that speaks to this. So if anyone wants to purchase that booklet, just let me know.
There's a question?
No, I would just continue. Katarina Jacobson, I'm the archaeologist.
Oh, okay. Katerina, maybe you can speak louder?
Yes, okay, just to continue, the Lucayans were the name of the people, but Taino is not, and I really want that people understand here that Taino is not the name of the indigenous of the Great Antilles, because this is already a European name they use. But all of them were different people, and the name we have is just the name the first people wrote, the first European wrote, and later there is Macolites, Sequoias, Lucayans. There is a lot of names. We don't know them, and they were grouped like Taino, but at least I know it's not the name of those people. And in the Les Antilles, they are named themselves Caninago and James.
They named themselves what?
Calinagos. Okay, I have two questions again. I have time for two questions, yes?
Sorry, I'm Dr. Curry, I'm Director of AMC, which my esteemed colleague was presenting. I wanted to just add nuance to the discussion that was just had. Not too much question, I'll be very brief. There is adaptation that occurs in the Bahamas. The Lucayans, although they may have been connected to a larger Taino language, their adaptation occurs when they meet an archipelago that has rugged, flat, very shallow soiled environment, which was not conducive for farming. So that adaptation creates a culture that is unique to our archipelago. Their communities, their villages are smaller. They reside within 15 feet of the high tide mark, generally speaking, though we have found other excavated sites in that. But generally speaking, the hierarchical structure that we would have found amongst other indigenous populations in the greater Caribbean area, we don't see that so much in the Bahamas. And then the social configuration, again, is a simpler configuration. That said, they rely heavily on maritime products. They're fishing more than they are farming. They do a bit of farming, but in excavating sites that I've been to in Long Island and elsewhere, you're seeing remnants of a diet that speaks to fishing and other maritime resources. That's all I need to say.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, and thank you.
Thank you.
Lemiko.